Welcome to Session 4 in the Leadership Unleashed Masterclass. I'm your host, Todd Bishop. We've been getting to know each other, and I cannot wait to hear about all that God is saying and doing in your life and in your leadership. In fact, if you want to take your life to a higher level, sometimes you need someone to help get you to a higher level. So if you're interested in coaching, I have a great coaching clinic that I do on an annual basis. It's a 12-month program. There is a fee for it, but I promise you, at the end of that journey, you're going to be a totally different leader. You're going to have more equipment and tools in your toolbox, and you're going to become everything God designed you to be as we work together to define, develop, and deploy you into the mission that God placed you on planet Earth for. You can access that information by just emailing my assistant, Maya, at toddbishop.tv. That's simply MYA at toddbishop.tv, and she'll get you started on that journey. Well, in this session, we're going to be talking about if you don't set your priorities, someone or something else will. Now, if you're a leader, you know this is true, that your priorities are always set by yourself. And if you don't set them, someone else, circumstances, an individual, they're going to come in and they're going to adjust your priorities for you. And most often, you're not even going to realize that your priorities were changed until the very end. Now, as a pastor, there's like two sides to me. There's Todd the pastor and Todd the leader. There's Todd the pastor who loves to preach and lead his church, Church Unleashed. And then there's Todd the leader who likes to develop leaders, host leadership conferences, coach, consult with people, do all those things. There's a tale of two Todds. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that my life has the right priority. So several years ago, I was able to get involved with a local university football team, Long Island University. I got to know several older players on the team, and they were looking for something more. And they said, hey, Pastor, we would love to have a Bible study for our football team. Now, there hadn't been one, to my knowledge, prior to that. And so I said, hey, you guys go ahead and start one. I'll support you. I'll be behind you. And they said, no, we want you to come and do it. And I said, well, when do you want that to happen? There's like Sundays at 3:30. I'm like, wait, I'm preaching all Sunday morning, and then you want me to jump in a car and drive 35 minutes to the local university to do a Bible study with 5 football players? Well, that's what the mission was. I had to make a decision. Is this part of my priority? And I looked at my life as a pastor and said, here's a group of young men that are looking for more in their faith. And I made a priority decision. I said, they're a priority because they want to grow in their faith. I want to make sure I'm there for them. So I remember we started that in August of that year. And as we're developing, we're growing, that group grows from 5 to 25. It's absolutely miraculous to see what's happened. Since that time, I've led about 100 football players and other athletes to the Lord. It's really miraculous what's happened, but it was about priority. So I made a priority decision to put what I value at the forefront of even my time. Now, here's the thing about priorities. Priorities are going to cost you your time. You're not really going to be able to say no to things if they're a priority for you. For example, my family is a priority for me. When I first started in ministry, I would literally be out doing ministry 6 nights a week. I would neglect my wife, my young child at the time. Now I have 3 kids, but at that point, it was a neglect. Now I'm home 6, 7 nights a week for dinner. Why? It's a priority to me. I don't want my kids to grow up without me, and so I want to make sure I'm always there for them. I don't want my wife to be a single mom to a ministry husband. I want to make sure I'm there. It's a priority. The same is true when I present the gospel. I want to make sure I'm presenting the gospel because it is a priority of my life as a pastor. So backtrack to Long Island University. I remember October of that year, I gave an invitation to the 7 players that were there. At that time, I said, hey, if any of you would like to start a relationship with Christ, I loved to 5 football players gave their lives to Christ that day, 5 of the 7. It was, for me, very moving. My son Malachi was with me at that one. And I was like, man, this is just so powerful. It's one of the things that drives me, priority. And so didn't realize how significant that priority decision would be until a few months later. December of that year, football team finishes their season. They don't finish very well on the record, but in faith, they were growing. Many of these players now, by that time, we have 20, 25 players in the program that would meet. We were not official. The school didn't even really know we were there. We were just doing it. We found a room in the athletic department building and just did it on Sunday afternoons. 25 students later. Well, we take break. There's a young man in there, Clay, and Clay and I got very close. We'd talk after Bible study each week. We text each other. We go back and forth on conversations. He had hurt his shoulder. I had sent him a care package and all these things that we just do as pastors, as leaders. And so never did I expect what would happen just a few weeks after the season ends. Clay and I, we have a conversation 2 days before he goes home. He goes home and he's at an event with some friends, and that night he was murdered. And I was like, whoa, I remember getting the news. We were in the middle of a Christmas production. And I remember just getting a call from Joe, and Joe's like, Pastor Todd, Clay was killed. I couldn't believe it. I was in the lobby of our church. I fell to my knees, and I was just overwhelmed. No. And then tracking down all the information, it was one of those heart-wrenching, tragic stories. Priorities. I think about this. That was just prior to Christmas. Christmas morning, Clay's dad, Casey, calls me. And calls me Christmas morning, and he says, "You have him?" And I texted him back. I said, "Hey, listen, we're opening gifts. Can I call you after we open gifts?" He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I can imagine, what's going on in his mind as a dad. He just loses his son just a few days before, and he's calling a pastor that was with his son, and his son was in Bible study with, and it was tough because when I got on the phone with Casey says to me, we have a little small talk, and he just says this, "Tell me, Pastor, did my son know Jesus?" I could take him to the date in October, and I said, "Mr. Bethard, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that your son restarted a relationship with Jesus on this date." We wept together. We prayed together. We talked together. Him and I have formed a lifelong friendship together out of tragedy. I say that to say this. If I didn't have the priority to make my life available to share the gospel, I don't know if that dad, Casey, would have had the assurance that his son made a profession of faith. No, as a pastor, that's my mission. That's my goal. That's my aim, is to present God's love to people. If that wasn't a priority for me, I would have said no, and I would have watched football on Sunday afternoons. Instead, I said, I'm going to give up what I have and my personal time to make a priority of presenting the gospel. See, your priorities matter, and you got to set them. Someone else is going to want to set them for you. Other people are going to want to set them for you. Other organizations are going to want to set them. But when you set your priorities, it's a lot easier to make decisions. Let me say that one again. If you set your priorities, it's a lot easier to make a decision. It was very easy for me to make a decision to lead a Bible study at a local university because I got to present Jesus to people. Since that time, 100 plus student athletes have started a relationship with Jesus Christ. Many of my friends thought it was great. That's too much. You're preaching 3 services, and then you're running here doing it. You're getting home at 6, 7 o'clock at night. That's a long day of just teaching. But I set a priority. It's the mission of my life. At the end of the long days and late nights, anybody hear about Jesus? That priority of presenting the gospel to people was seen, and it had immediate effects. You've got to set priorities. And when you set the right priorities as a leader, you know what will happen? People will follow you. People see you're a priority living person. When you're a priority living person, you'll make a difference not just in your life, not just in your family's life, but you'll make a difference to all those around you. See, even today, Many years after that, I still have certain priorities, one of which is my family. There are days I'll go to work late and I'll have breakfast with my family. We homeschool our kids. I'll breakfast with my family, and I'm not going to complain. It is what it is. I need to have time with my family. So if I'm working on projects later, I'm going to make sure I set aside time to be with my family. If you don't set your priorities, something or someone else will. In this leadership module, you've got to make sure that at the end of this masterclass session, you set some priorities. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. I want you to write down your top 10 priorities for your life. The top 10 priorities for your life, not just for a year. I'm talking your life. What are the priorities of your life? What are the priorities of your home life, your work life, your personal life? Write them down. And as you write them down, I really believe those priorities are going to spring to life. Sometimes we don't know what our priorities are because we didn't take time to write them down. So here's the challenge. Ready? Leadership Unleashed Masterclass, write down your top 10 priorities. And when you do, I really believe those priorities are going to spring to life. Because if you don't set your priorities, something or someone else will.